Hey guys, Luke here. Welcome to the channel. In this video, I will show you how to shoot the Milky Way on almost any camera that supports long exposures. That camera could be almost anything from a DSLR or mirrorless camera to even modern day smartphones. Anyway, let's talk about equipment that is needed for astrophotography. First things first, a sturdy tripod. A tripod is pretty much required for this type of photography, as the camera shutter will be open for a long period of time. Another product that I highly recommend to you is a shutter release. The shutter release will help you take photos without you touching the camera. Also, I highly recommend a lens of a wide aperture, usually f2.8 or lower. This is because you don't want to bring your ISO up too high, as you will get noisy images. Usually the noise becomes very noticeable over 6400 ISO if your camera can go higher than that. Now that we've sorted out what equipment to use, let's plan a night where we can go out and shoot. Introducing PhotoPills. This app tells you when the sun, moon and Milky Way rises and sets, and when nighttime starts and ends. You can also check where the Milky Way will be at a certain time. I also want to explain what the Milky Way season is and when the best times of year are to shoot it. As you already know, the Earth orbits the Sun every year and the Moon orbits the Earth every month. The Milky Way core does not move, but our view of it does, due to our orbit around the Sun. So, in December, the Milky Way is behind the Sun from our perspective, which means the Milky Way will be up in the daytime. In June, it is the other way around. We are in between the Sun and the Milky Way core from our perspective. This means every month our view of the Milky Way changes until it is not visible anymore. So with all that information down, let's get back to planning. We now have to find a place to actually take these photos. There's also an obstacle that will prevent you from taking photos of the Milky Way, and that is so-called light pollution. Light pollution is caused by city and town lights lighting up the sky. The only way to pass this obstacle is to go somewhere with a darker sky. I use a website called lightpollutionmap.info. This website will show you a map of where the light pollution is coming from and where there is less light pollution. As you can see on this chart here, the brighter the colors are, the more light pollution there will be. The more light pollution there will be, the less stars you will see, and you will not see the Milky Way. I also forgot to mention, don't try to shoot when the moon is up, as the moon creates its own light pollution. Now for the weather. Make sure it is 100% clear with no clouds in sight. I use a very accurate weather website and app, and it's called Clear Outside. This website or app is recommended by most astronomers, as it is usually quite accurate upon others. It also shows you the dew point and humidity. Try not to go on a humid night, as your lens will become foggy and you might risk damaging your lens if not weather sealed. So I'm about Enjoy Lighthouse doing a bit of astrophotography. I've already taken 55 frames because I use a method called stacking, which I will explain to you later. Now, the method of shooting I use, there's a rule called the 600 or 500 rule, which you divide by your focal length by 600. So that is 600 divided by 35 for me. That will equal your shutter speed that you put on your camera. So I'm using 13 seconds because I don't want to get any star trails. But if you're on an APS-C sensor, you have to divide that again by 1.6 if your crop factor is 1.6. So I don't want to go past 3200 ISO because that will introduce a lot more noise and that will be harder to get out in post-processing, unless you are stacking, which I will explain to you a bit later. So let's get back to shooting, shall we? So that's pretty much how to shoot the Milky Way. Let's get into post-processing. Okay, so now we are in the Adobe Lightroom. Now I'm going to show you how I process my images. So, what I first do usually, if I'm not stacking, is I go down to noise reduction, turn it up to 15, bring the color noise reduction, that's already set at 25, but I bring the smoothness up from 50 to 100 to make the reduction smoother. Also, I don't know why I put this in a line like that, but I bring it up, sharpening up a little bit. I bring the masking up to 100 because it doesn't really matter, it's not going to be printed, in my opinion. I might just keep the masking at 100, and that will reduce any further noise that you'll see. Also, I'm going to remove the chromatic aberration and enable lens profile corrections. And if the vignetting gets a bit overkill, we'll try and fix that later. So now that we've done that, I would usually bring the exposure down if it's this high, if it's that overexposed or that exposed, I guess. Bring the contrast up to about 75, highlights down to about 55, shadows up to about maybe 75 as well. Well, one off, who cares about it. Bring the whites up to about 25, blacks down to about maybe 35. Now I don't like to mess with the texture sliders that much, so I'm going to leave it at about maybe 5. I'm going to bring the clarity up to about maybe 20, yeah, and then dehaze it about 40. Now you can see how the dehaze slider brung the Milky Way out a lot, but we don't want to dehaze it too much or else it just looks absolutely horrible, as you can see, and it will bring out a lot of noise. So I'm going to undo that. What I'm now going to do is bring up the vibrance to about 25, maybe 10 in the saturation. Now I will bring this down to about 5000 Kelvin because this is a raw file we're dealing with, so it doesn't really matter what white balance you set it on in the first place when you're shooting, because you can always adjust it later in post. That's what I like about raw files. Now I'm going to bring this up to about 17 the tint, or maybe even 20. Maybe actually not, maybe just 16 is good enough. Now I'm going to bring the tone curve in the mids just a little bit up. I'm going to bring the lows, the blacks, down a bit to increase that contrast, maybe not too much. And you can already see the lighthouse is making lines, streaks of light all the way down. As you can see, there's 3 of them, which isn't good for astrophotography because they recently replaced a bulb in the lighthouse and it is now heaps brighter, which is horrible. I don't like it at all. And that place is supposed to be turning into a dark sky reserve park, and they just make the light bulb even brighter. Like, how is that going to help? So with that done, let's go and show you how I stack. Now what you want to do for stacking is you want to bring all the noise reduction down to 0, even the sharpening, because that will kind of ruin whatever you're doing and it won't bring any detail out. As you can see here, all this noise is going to go and all the nebulosity in the Milky Way is going to stay, because as you probably know, noise is completely random. It changes within every shot, and the more shots you take, the less noise there will be after the stacking process. I'm going to open Stellarium Landscape Stacker. This is just for demonstration purposes. I've already stacked them and exported it. The post is now on Instagram. Quality pics from Tino is in the description below. Now I will open the TIFF files that we just saved. It will read all the images. So now we will remove the red dots in the foreground, which will be down here in the water. As you can see, there's a bit of red dots, and the red dots represent stars in the sky. So we don't want any of that on the ground, as the mask will probably select the ground too, and you'll have to remove that afterwards, which isn't the most pleasant thing. So I'm going to add some red dots around here. I'm going to go straight across the ocean, the horizon here. Sorry if my mouse isn't very accurate. So I'm just going to make a boundary so I can start adding little red dots here in the sky and the just above the horizon. This is what I usually do for stacking. I mean, it is not very necessary just to do that. Now I will press Find Sky. which will now find the sky. I will go to the sky painting. I'll paint all the sky in the top because sometimes it just doesn't do it for you. And if we go to ground, bring that down a bit, you can see that the ocean was also selected just near the tree over here. So I'm going to get rid of that, like that. And now I'm going to press align and composite. It is that easy. I can't believe they just made it so easy. It's so good. You're going to see the final image in a second, and you will see that there's no more noise. As you can see here, there is no noise, and you can see all the nebulosity without the noise. Now if we zoom in, you can see a little bit of noise, but that's not very noticeable from afar. Now if you're wondering how much the stacking software costs, this is not free. This is like 65 Australian dollars. So if you're using a Windows computer, you're lucky to have a free version called Sequitur. Now I don't have a Windows computer, so I won't demonstrate that for you, but there you go. There's your final Milky Way image. Now I don't want to save this because I already saved one and I posted it on Instagram, so that's pretty much the stacking process and the post-production. I hope you enjoyed my video. If you did, please give this video a like. Make sure you comment down below what you thought about the video or any things I can improve on. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, and I will see you all in the next video. Thanks for watching.